Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I am proud to bring you Scholars from the Edge of Time, -1 scholar. Greetings, Nicholas. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Aside from, I know today hasn't been the greatest day for you, but I think hopefully overall since the last time we talked that things have been going awesome for you.
Things generally go awesome for me, but
I,
what's the use of being Hercules if you don't have challenges? So I have more than my share.
you know what you just said there is going to tie directly into something I'm going to bring up in our dialogue in a little bit. That's a very important point, actually. Well, I'm glad you said that because they'll tie into our movie in a second. I am Sans one scholar today. Michelle could not be here, so flying a little bit solo. So I won't have the back and forth repartee that we have, but it'll be you and I hanging out. So I look forward to hanging with you, sir.
Me too. I'm looking forward to it a lot.
Well, doing a little catch up since the last time we talked. So first things first, uh, I got it. I went out on eBay and I did find a copy of Swordsman 2 Gladiator.
All right.
So you know it's coming in the future. We're gonna watch this bad boy and discuss it. So Lorenzo Lamas, Mr. Renegade himself, that's what I know him from. They used to show that on USA all the time. But come on, Gladiator Cop. That is a
Oh,
terribly awesome title.
yes, it is.
But not last episode, but the episode before, we talked about G2 Mortal Conquest, and basically the same people that made that movie made this one before. This movie is a reworking into that other movie. So instead of the French martial artists, we have Lorenzo Lamas as gladiator couples. You know what? I know it won't be an image in this film, but I like the idea of a guy in a cop uniform and a badge, but he's also got like a lion pelt on and a sword. That would be cool. So future episode, future scholars, and then I wish I could track down Swordsman 1. That's VHS only. That is probably way out of print, never probably going to see a release. Maybe it might stream on something like Tubi, but I'm a physical media man,
Me
so
too.
we'll see. But
You might want to ask in some of the sword and sandal groups. I know
mhm,
people who found very obscure films that came out in Italy
yeah,
sometimes. So I know my cousin actually, he was looking for a Peplum film with Tina Louise, I believe on Sappho or something like that. And
yeah.
somebody in Peplum Paradise directed him to it.
I, you know, Back in the aughts and early 2010s, I was still tracking down DVDs of movies that hadn't even thought of in the States yet. And I wound up like importing them from like Italy or Germany. So I'd have like a PAL Region 5 cut of
Uh-huh.
Commissar X or something like that, whatever. But yeah, it sounds like the person that runs Peplum TV, he'll sometimes show HD screenshots of some movies, but they're all from Blu-ray editions for movies that are not out here yet. Oh, I want that copy, but I didn't get it. So always jelly. So yeah, Gladiator Cop that is procured. Last month for Michelle and I on our HP Lovecast podcast, we did an interview with Ness Brown on her space horror novel, The Scourge Between Stars. And then I went ahead and I also did a book review of her book. And it's a fun book. So at my website, I've got for all you space horror fans out there who like Aliens, Predator, Event Horizon, and the like, I've got a book review of this book up now. And of course, our interview with her. And then later this week at the end of the month, that's when we drop our interview episodes in our podcast. We're dropping our interview with Angela Sylvain. She wrote a 90s retro horror book about evil prairie dogs invading that came from a meteorite that crash landed in a small South Dakota town. So it is all over the map, and it's awesome because there's that whole genre of animals run amok. Jaws, Grizzly, Day of the Animal, Day of the Triffids. Wait, not Day of the Triffids. What's the one with the bunnies?
I look.
Whatever. There's a Killer Bunny one that came out in the 70s that's got Gene Forrest, the guy from Star Trek in it, and then now we're in the phase of Sharknadoes and Lava Scorpion films or whatever. So why not Killer Prairie Dogs? And it's fun. It's old school 90s nostalgic style horror. So not quite Stranger Things-ish, but more like my age, growing up in the 90s, got internet and watching Nickelodeon and stuff like that. What else do I have? Oh, okay. And the last piece is most of the stuff that Michelle and I have been working on are the longer term projects. So I'll probably be cranking out some more short-term stuff. But the last time we talked, we did a brief segment. And I talked about a video game I was playing called Star Sand.
I
And
remember.
I bummed because it broke. Well, Michelle and I went and bought a new Xbox, the newer model, the Xbox Series X, and I tried the game again on that, and it worked. And I was able to beat the game and see the
All
ending.
right. Congratulations.
Yeah, happy ending. The ending was terrible, but happy ending for me that I got, it wasn't just had to start over and deal with glitches and cropping out of everything. So, it just sounds like the older model Xbox didn't have the gusto to run the game, which it's not that great of it's not like playing like Fortnite or some, crazy, colorful first-person shooter or something. But anyway, so closure to our last dialogue, folks. I beat Star Sand. The ending is you meet up with other space aliens that go to other worlds to start Egypt-type cultures, and it's a Mobius strip type story. So the end of the game becomes the beginning of the game. Sometimes those are pulled off fine. This time it wasn't. So the fun part is really just building your towns at oases, running on your camel around. There's only one pyramid to explore, and there's no mummies or sarcophaguses. They really could have played up the ancient alien / ancient Egypt's angle a little bit better, So give me Stargate, the video game.
They're doing a lot of new Stargate stuff, or they're potentially doing a lot of new Stargate stuff. Supposedly the series is coming back. I've heard that many times before and it hasn't happened, but lately there's been some activity. And Babylon 5 came back as an animated feature, and they're talking about a new series.
Yeah, Stargate's one of those universes that you don't even need to reboot. The premise is there. You go through the Stargate to see other worlds, so you can just keep continuing it with new military personnel and scientists doing their own thing. So that'd be cool. I watched a little bit of SG-1, but not much. I was just a big fan of the movie. Nothing against SG-1. It's just I just never caught most of it. But I guess I always equate Richard Dean Anderson and MacGyver more than the Kurt Russell character. All right, so that's all the news fit to print. So today on Scholars, we're going to be talking about Ironmaster.
Ta-da!
God, I have never seen this before until now. In fact, I only recently procured this movie. I think I got it about 3 months ago. The label who put it out, Kino Lorber, had a big sale at their website, and I was looking through it, and Ironmaster, okay, I'll pluck that up. So, interesting 80s sort of sword and sorcery. Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute, but let's do a plot. Okay, so plot. Thousands of years ago in prehistory, there is a valley full of tribes of hunter-gatherers. Ela's tribe is not having much luck hunting lately, and their leaders want to step down and have someone else lead in their stead. The impatient Vood wants to lead the tribe, but he's very unhinged. Other folks want Ela to lead instead. During a hunt for a boar, Ela's tribe is attacked by another tribe who fling bolas at them. Vood takes advantage of the skirmish to assassinate one of his tribe's elders, which Ela witnesses. During a funeral ritual, Ela calls Vood out, who then attacks Ela but winds up killing the other elder instead. Vood is expelled from the tribe. Later on, Vood takes shelter from an erupting volcano inside of the volcano. Not not the place I would hide, but it works out for him because the next morning he finds this sliver of iron that had melted from the volcano's heat. It's basically a sword. It cuts through everything. He picks it up and he's bashing everything with it. And he's like, oh, wow, this is awesome. Way better than our sticks. Vood kills a lion and dons its head, while a seductress from another tribe, Lilith, charms Vood by telling him he's a chosen one. Vood returns back to his tribe and uses his iron sword to injure Ela and become the new leader. Ela is now taken to the desert and tied up to die. Vood becomes lustful for power and violence. He quickly invents smithing and forging. He takes his tribe to the volcano and turns it into a metalworks, cranking out swords. He basically skips the Bronze Age altogether. Boom, Iron Age. With everyone armed, he begins attacking every tribe in and outside the valley, killing all the men and making women slaves. He conquers everyone and is unstoppable with his cache of swords. Meanwhile, Ela escapes his crucifixion in the desert and teams up with Isa, who is from an agricultural tribe. They travel back to her village, and in the process, they encounter some Homo habilis, witness Vood killing everyone. They fall into a pit. They rescue a kid that was attacked from the village, and then they run with some buffaloes. There's a lot of buffaloes in this film.
Very eventful walk home.
Ela tries to convince Moog, the leader of Isa's village, that they need to arm themselves before Vood attacks. But Moog is a pacifist, and he says no. And then Vood attacks. Using the art of stealth, Ela retakes Moog's village and retrieves a sword for himself. Ela then invents archery and challenges Vood mano a mano. Of course, Vood shows up with all his men, but they get pelted with arrows and they all flee. Ela and Vood get into a sword fight, which Ela wins. But Vood, in a very wise final line, warns that there will always be another Vood. Ela takes this heed to heart and promptly disposes of all the weapons in the village's lake. The end.
Ta-da!
So that's Ironmaster. So first time watching it, and I knew it was sword and sorcery adjacent, but I didn't know much going into it. And I didn't realize it's basically Italy's version of Quest of Fire, which I've only seen bits of and read about. So I'm like, oh, so this is Italy's answer to Quest of Fire. So Ironmaster, I actually dug it. It's different from normal barbarian and strongman films. It went in directions I didn't quite expect. Now, when it comes to 80s prehistoric barbarian films, to me, your Hunter from the Future is still number one.
Yes.
Red Brown brings the charm as a fun movie. Ironmaster's a little dour, but I like what they do in it. So let's get into the peplum things of it, because this is where it gets weird and different, which I respect, and I always like challenges to things. So let's talk about that main character, Ela, because earlier you said, as Hercules, you need the challenges, and one of the things in a classic peplum is the strongman character, the Hercules, the Samson, all of them. They go through challenges to show off their incredible strength, be it flinging boulders and toppling towers. There's always something to challenge them. And our character, Ela, doesn't really have that happen to him. He's shown like he's a buff looking guy. But aside from a scene where he's kind of crucified in the desert and he rips off a rope, he doesn't really show his Herculean strength. He doesn't use his might to overcome anything. Now, he uses his mind. He invents archery later. But he's like a strong man who is just visually strong, but doesn't showcase his strength, which is one of the appeals of kind of a classic peplum. But then here's the other thing that's kind of different with him is, we'll talk about, sword and sandal. There's the sword part of it, and how in classic peplum, swords are disposable, because at the end of the day, it is the strong man's character that's going to overcome anything. The sword is just an extension of that. You don't really need a sword. They're great to have, but sword, cudgel, whatever you want to call it. In sword and sorcery, on the other hand, the main character typically has to have a sword. And they usually have the sword. It's a magic sword, a sword from a meteorite, something special. Thundar the Barbarian has his light sword. He-Man has his sword. They usually have some sort of sword that that they've quested for and they got. It's their sword. But usually they're still kind of formidable without their sword. They could still solve problems and overcome other things. I bring this up because Ela, the way he's portrayed, like through the movie, there's no challenges for him. Yeah, sure, he gets stabbed and he's on the run a lot, but he doesn't do a lot of battling. There's not a lot of fisticuffs because, well, the people have swords and they're going to slice them up, I guess. And so he only becomes effective when he actually gets a weapon. Before he's able to, get an iron sword from one of his fallen, other tribesmen that turned against him, that's only when he can actually battle. Before that, he can't, which is really an antithesis of what we see in a normal peplum strongman character, where you throw anything at them and they will get through it. And this character doesn't. And he's like a fake strongman character in a weird sort of way. Now, he still triumphs in the end. He uses his ingenuity, his smarts, because, Conan, has both muscle, brawn, and brains. He's educated and all that stuff. So he has them both. Maybe this character is trying to end on a Conan note, because again, he invents archery. He comes up with a plan to stop everyone, the Vood and his men attacking, but it feels like he's not quite a traditional peplum character, and he's not quite a normal sword and sorcery character either. So it's just weird, especially because he's just ineffective until he becomes armed. Now, the irony is the main villain of the film, Vood, played by George Eastman, who's in a lot of Italian 70s and 80s productions. The stuff, even though he's the bad guy, the stuff that usually happens to the good guy is what happens to him. He's the one who gets the special sword. He's the first to get a sword, and as the movie progresses, his sword becomes more ornate and gets a handle and carvings on it. So in a sword and sorcery fashion, he gets the super sword. But then there's the scene where he wrestles the lion. Not wrestle, but he stabs it. He fights a lion. But that's a figurative, like, Nemean lion. That should be the heroic act for a Hercules character to do, not the evil antagonist to do. But sure enough, he's the one who slays the lion and dons its pelt. Now, it doesn't make him like invincible or anything. It's all symbolic, but he does what the hero is supposed to do: kill the lion, wrestle the lion. I have an entire essay on lion fighting that's going to be published later. So yeah, it's weird that the villain has the more heroic things going for him. But as a side note, he's played by George Eastman, who to me looks exactly like Ellis from Die Hard, the really sleazy businessman. So I don't buy him as a barbarian. He's got that 80s beard going on, and put him in a suit instead. I buy him in spaghetti westerns and I buy him in other stuff. I just don't quite buy him as a barbarian. He's too gussied up, I guess is the word. So some other things that this movie runs in different directions than kind of expecting from a normal, either classic peplum or 80s sword and sorcery / strongman film. One of the things we've talked about before is how does a Hercules character demonstrate their strength? And, again, toppling towers, throwing rocks. Those are your challenges. One of the things that we see a Hercules character do is turn a millstone. Usually, maybe there's a town that has a millstone and the Hercules character arrives and says, I will do that for you. Or in the case of like Conan, that's his torture. He's just got to keep turning the stone. Or in a movie like Hercules against the Mongols, the Hercules character in that is taken prisoner and he's forced to work the millstone. The idea is he's so strong he can operate this giant grinding stone by himself, and that's a way to show how strong he is. There is a millstone in this film. It's not operated by our main character. It's operated by a couple women from the village, which is not what you typically portray. If the Hercules character is not doing it, usually you have like slave dudes doing it.
Lots of slave dudes doing it.
Yeah, but not here. Instead, they've got two ladies. One of them's not doing a good job because she keeps tripping, but regardless, they're still turning this millstone, making grain, and it's interesting because one, that's a visual that you don't associate with women in antiquity of doing or in filmic peplum or stuff. But two, it kind of says these women are stronger than they appear, which is good, but it also means our hero is not as strong as he appears. And as we said, he doesn't have any challenges. He doesn't show off his strength. It's only when he gets his sword can he do anything. So the scene, I don't think it was meant to be this way, but I'm taking it as kind of another knock at our hero is ineffectual.
I think that's a good point. Have you ever seen Mondo Bolero?
Mondo Bolero?
Mondo, I think maybe Bolero. It has a clip in there of Hercules, the cinematic Hercules, and he finishes his feats of strength, and then the guys come in to change the set, the laborers, and they're instantly picking up all these columns and stones and stuff and moving them around to make room for a new part of the movie, I guess. And what you described has that type of ring to it.
I think I know what you're talking about. Severin Films, they released a couple Mondo films recently, and I plucked up a couple. I have a couple Mondo films. I'm not as fluent in them. I know how influential they are. I want to say Severin put out a version of Mondo Bolero, and I plucked it up and I haven't watched it yet, but I could be wrong.
Boris Karloff is the narrator, I think.
Yep. Nope. I got it. Yep. I haven't watched it, but I do have it. I have the Severin edition. Yep. So I didn't realize that there is a peplum sequence in that film. So I got homework to do. Luckily, my homework is right in the other room. I have the movie. So I did not know that.
I wrote on it. I've covered it in several radio or e-radio shows over the years.
Yes. Okay.
I even found an image of it online somewhere at one point.
So Mondo Ballardo, yep, with Boris Karloff. So I appreciate that tip. I did not know that film, and that sounds quite subversive to a normal peplum trope. So that is cool. All right. What else do I got here? I got a couple other things. So I guess okay, so here's a question. Is Ironmaster a peplum film? Should it be lumped in that category? I mean, obviously it's not a 60s Italian film, but depending on how you categorize films, the 80s movies are this, recreation of the 60s movies. They're just more sword and sorcery than sword and sandal. So our main character, he looks like a strong man, but I've kind of debunked that he's really a strong man. He just has the visual component to it. The funny thing is the Blu-ray I keep holding on here, that cover looks more horror, but as you shared, there's a VHS cover that is completely sword and sorcery. It's got the character on the front wielding an axe. The lady is bare chested, and I think she's got a weapon. It totally looks like fantasy. So if that sequence was in the movie, that might be kind of cool. So it's not really, it's not antiquity, but there is prehistoric peplum out there. It's rarer, but it is out there. Is it a sword and sorcery film? There's not real magic in it, but there's talk of gods. There is a scene where there's a cave painting and it bleeds, which I'm going to take as an omen. It's an omen sequence. So if there is some fantasy in it, it's very light. So since it came out in the 80s during that Italian run of Conan knockoffs, I just think this is kind of along for the ride. It has enough sword and sorcery visuals to be part of that camp. It's sort of like Yore kind of challenges a lot of stuff because it's prehistoric, but it's in the future. There's robots, but then there's guys on fire with flaming swords. Yore's an actual strongman. He does feats of strength, so Yore has dinosaurs. There's no dinosaurs in this film. It's all more primitive people. But what it does have in common with Yore is, the discovery of technology kind of turns the tide for characters. So, in Yore, at the end, he gets a laser gun, which, Red Brown, I think he could still beat up everyone, but he's got a laser gun, so it allows him to shoot all the robots. Ironmaster, the guy, invents iron and makes swords, and it kind of turns the tide. This may sound weird, but this puts those movies kind of in the same camp, dare I say, as 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yes, I can see that.
It's at that level. Maybe not quite, but yeah, the beginning sequence of 2001 is basically those movies. Ironmaster stretched out for sure. All right, so a couple other points I want to bring up that aren't really peplum related, but just kind of general observations, like that this movie is, Ironmaster and 2001. You could double feature that. All right, so I do like the setting in this film. It is a different type of prehistoric setting. Usually when folks think of prehistory, they just go straight back to dinosaur era, Jurassic Age and Paleolithic ages and stuff. And so it's at a different age. It's where humans are a bit more advanced, and it shows other not quite humans. And so you've got your normal Homo sapiens, which is our characters, and they show other folks that are more ape-like. I think they're supposed to be Homo habilis. That I'm butchering that. I'm not very gifted on pronouncing large syllable words, but they're like humans, but they're more ape-like. And they live in caves and they throw rocks. And I don't know, this seeing kind of like two different species of humans, where humans kind of diverge from, Neanderthals and all that stuff, kind of fighting and stuff. I think that's neat. It's different. It shows, kind of, evolutionary wise, kind of how complex things were back then. The societies in here. Again, most of the folks in this film are living in the Stone Age, but you have Vood, who basically ushers in the Iron Age immediately. And then you have another society that's completely agrarian, who are pacifists. And again, I think that's just different for the setting of primitive area, where, you mostly just see our pop culture depictions of this hunter-gatherers going out there and doing their thing. So again, having different species of humans and different kind of societies evolving differently, but at the same time, this kind of shows that our ancestral soup is kind of mixed with lots of different vegetables and stuff, yummy, the stew pot we all came from, I suppose. So the movie is very heavy-handed with its message of violence. Basically, you come into power. In this case, Vood comes into power because he has a doomsday weapon, an iron sword. No one else has iron swords. His swords can chop through spears and kill everyone in one hit, beheads people. So he's unstoppable. That's a very, I don't want to say quite up a Cold War analogy, but it kind of is, in a weird, we have a stockpile of nuclear weapons type stuff. But, there's the tribe, the agricultural tribe, the leader of that Moog, he takes the pacifist stance. Violence doesn't really get you anywhere. You can always outsmart him or do something more peaceful. And of course, the movie shows, yeah, right, I'm gonna kill you. But the main villain, he does say that final line of, yeah, kill me, but there will always be someone else with weapons coming along. And what is the answer to that? The main character, Ela, his first answer is, well, I need weapons too. And that comes a very back to Kubrick instead of 2001, very Doctor Strangelove, building up your nuclear armaments to go to. I just equated this Italian film to 2 Kubrick films. But in the end, he decides, nope, we don't need weapons. We're peaceful. And he tosses them all in a lake. And of course, the irony is probably the very next day, some of Vood's men will show up and get revenge, So, it's kind of a have it cake and eat it too cautionary tale of violence begins violence, live by the sword, die by the sword, might makes right. But at the same time, pacifism is truly the answer. Even though it's not what prevails in the film. It's Ela getting a sword and then learning archery that does. So its message is mixed. And definitely probably unintentionally, some Cold War era phobias leaked into that. What else?
Those are great points. And just like in the Argonautica, the Argo was high technology. That the boat was something way ahead of its time. So it was like the Argonauts had technology on their side. Here too, the villain hero has technology on his side, and to us it might be primitive, but to him in his world, it is very advanced technology.
Now that you mention it, I'm having a memory of, I think it was 3 or 4 episodes ago, we talked about Atlantis, the Lost Continent. And, the people of Atlantis, they're not, they're ruled by bad guys. The populace is more hubris, I guess. But, they have the high technology of laser weapons and a submarine and stuff like that. And despite all that, the main villain of that film is bloodthirsty. He's got a laser gun. He wants to take over the world. And of course, his hubris is his downfall. I guess Vood's hubris is his downfall because Ela basically tricks him to come back to the village where he can be slain. There's something there. I'm not exactly the expert on, violence in pop culture, but there is definitely something there that just because you have the biggest stick, the sharpest sword, and the most bombs, you'll take yourself down. Maybe that's Moog's point, the leader of the pacifist village. But again, the hero is the one who takes him down, but only when he gets a weapon. A real Hercules character wouldn't need the sword. He would use his wits and his own strength to over. Anyway, it sounds like I'm ragging on the film. Again, I enjoy it because it is a challenging film. It does turn on the the gearboxes up here of, that's interesting.
Do you remember on the Adventure, that television series?
Oh, in the 90s?
With Max Mueller, I think. Ralph Mueller.
Yeah, I think I've seen 1 or 2 episodes. That was when I was a kid and before I was into this stuff. I know I love Ralph Mueller. He's awesome in everything he's in, from Gladiator to his music career of singing with Inomine. He's awesome. Oh, he was in Universal Soldier, I think, too. But yeah, anyway, that Conan series,
Yeah, he had an episode in there where he met he had an Atlantean sword, like
Yeah.
the first Conan with Schwarzenegger, but here the Atlantean sword, was like this magical weapon almost that he
Mhm.
had. And a former friend of his, Saban, who was going to betray him, was going to go try to steal his sword.
Uh-huh.
And Conan made the point by, I believe, killing him with another weapon while Saban held the sword. And I think Conan's last words that Saban heard before he died was, "It's not the sword, Saban."
Yeah,
So the sword was the Atlantean sword, but that wasn't what the hero is. Conan. So whatever sword he wields is the magic sword.
exactly. Because it's Conan's strength that's gonna prevail at the end, and that's channeled through his sword, and how he uses it stuff. Yeah, you could put whatever in Conan's hands, axe, stick, nothing, and he'll prevail because one, he's heroic, and two, he doesn't have that same hubris. As a side note, completely unrelated, I was on Twitter like 2 days ago, and I saved this image. There's a Conan comic, and it caught my eye. It just popped up on my Twitter, and I love it. And I can't really show it because it's tiny, but it's Conan having dinner with Doctor Doom. And basically the exchange is like, Dr. Doom's like, eat up, it's not poisoned. The food's not poisoned. And Conan's like, I'm not offended by that. I'm offended you've got your mask on. And why is that? And Dr. Doom says, because I was wounded. And Conan basically says, oh, so you're vain. That's kind of the gist of it. That's kind of, observations and wisdom from Conan, who is a barbarian, but a very educated one that you don't usually see like in a barbarian tale. You wouldn't,
Yeah, you could read maps. You could read
oh yeah.
languages. A lot of people miss that about Conan. Conan was very educated and very smart.
Yeah, I haven't read much Robert E. Howard, but again, the very first Conan movie is, yeah, he's on the millstone, sold into slavery, made to fight in the pits, but his owner, until he's freed, puts him through school and has him learn things, learn to read and all that other stuff, and sire babies with women. He gets everything, I guess.
And then
But
lets him go mysteriously for reasons that are hard to comprehend.
well, you know what? There's baby Conans running out there, so that sets up, instead of the Mighty Sons of Hercules, you could have a Mighty Sons of Conan show.
One day we might see that, and then you'll be a prophet.
So I guess wrapping up on Ironmaster, a couple other points is this movie uses models, Italian models, and they're not fooling anyone, but they're convincing enough. There's a volcano that erupts. It's obviously a model. It's still way better than when we watched a couple episodes ago, Gladiators from 2072, where the models of the city, they weren't fooling no one. Those were just boxes. They were terrible. But for special effect wise, the movie uses a lot of stock footage of the volcano erupting, which I get. But they couldn't find stock footage of lightning because they throw in scenes of like animated lightning, so it's very out of place. And I'm like, you guys couldn't spend the extra money to get lightning stock footage? You probably spent more animating lightning than you would have on stock footage for it. But if I have to say, if there's really anything really bad about the film, is it is Italian, and if you're an animal appearing in an Italian film, something bad's going to happen to you. And so this movie does have its moments of cannibal holocaust, of where animals are actually slain, and that's never good. So I'm not a fan of that. They kill a boar and they actually show them skinning it and everything, and like, I kept expecting all the scenes of buffalo, of which there are many, that they would try to wrestle or do something for buffalo, because the movie was shot in South Dakota, which that book I just brought up, Frostbite, which I'm doing an interview with, takes place. So interesting to shoot an Italian peplum, pseudo peplum, sword and sorcery film in the States. in an area where there's buffalo and lions that our characters can fight. So that's probably really the only blah part is not good to watch, animals actually get hurt. But outside that, it strays very far from what I expect to see in Italian genre films, be it peplum or sword and sorcery, especially for our character. In that regard, do I think like the character is a successful character? Not really. I think he's kind of a failure as a strongman character. I don't think he's heroic. I don't think he's strong. He's definitely at the bottom of the pole. Up here you're going to have your Hercules, your Samson, your Ursus, your Yor, and way bottom you're going to have Ela. He just doesn't stand up. But I think that's what makes it interesting, because I go in watching a Hercules film or an Italian barbarian film, and you go in knowing, oh yeah, there's going to be sword fights. Our characters will be triumphant at the end. But it's the in between stuff, the journey, is where you see kind of the different stuff pop out. And this movie definitely took the different path. And it's weird that it took all of the hero stuff and put it on the villain, which in theory should make for a really good villain. But he's played by George Eastman, who is a fine actor. He's just not a barbarian. And so that concludes Ironmaster. I recommend it. It's different. It's not my favorite Italian sword and sorcery of the 80s. I think we talked about it many, many months ago. I still hold Ruggero Deodato's Barbarians as a really good one because it's fun, and I like their enthusiasm in that film, and of course Yor is up there. So is it that high on the temp pole? No, but I think it's such a weird outlier that it definitely needs to be watched, and probably in conjunction with Quest for Fire, because that's a similar movie. Apparently, the different early humans discover fire, and it tilts the power balance and stuff. So there you go.
It came out around the same time as another barbarian sword and sorcery. I don't remember what it was called, but I know they came out at least on VHS together. And I used to have both of them before the flood took away my VHS collection. But the other film had two brothers.
Yeah.
And, they were expecting a chosen one, but they didn't know which brother it was. And one brother was very heroic, and the other brother was not so heroic. He was kind of covetous and sneaky and that. And I remember the thing I remember about that movie was that they filmed a lot of nude scenes and just stuck them in there for no reason at all. They didn't further the plot or do anything other than have one of the female characters naked most of the time in the scene. I don't know what it was called, but that came out at the same time as Ironmaster. So in my brain, they're equated together.
So what's going to happen is when we're done with this episode, everyone, Hercules' little light bulb will go off like, the wisdom has struck me. I remember that movie now. And you'll have to text it to me because now I want to know what it is. It has nothing to do with gratuitous inserted nudity, I assure you.
I believe that. I'll see if I can find a review of Mondo Balordo, the segment. I'll see if I can find that.
Okay, and my copy is sitting seriously right out there. I got it from a Severance sale like over the summer. I think that's exactly when I got it, just because I just don't have that many Mondo films, and it was on sale. So I will have to watch it because it's got Boris Karloff. Come on, he gave us Black Sabbath and all those great AIP films, and he might have been Frankenstein.
I remember the first line of my review of that movie. It was published in a video store magazine, but I wrote down that it's well worth watching ... once.
Oh no!
Is it a Boris Karloff and at Hercules? So,
well, I'm maybe future episode after I watched it, one of our shorter episodes. I think we have one of those next month. Maybe I'll bring that one up. I'll go and watch it and see what it's like. Talk about the Hercules scene.
That will be awesome. And I thank you for reviving my memories of this movie. It started to come back to me as you spoke.
Ironmaster. It's definitely a curio in the genre, and for that, it's definitely worth investigating. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's also entertaining. There's action, there's a lot of fighting, just not from the hero. Our hero is just not heroic.
And maybe that's the point. Maybe the point is that the heroes of old that we look up to and admire, they were thugs, if you look at them in a particular way.
At the end of the day, the outside of the movie, the adventure will continue of Vood's people that he's conquered with the sword. They'll pick up because as Vood said, there'll always be another Vood. So, people remember the Genghis Khans and whatnot. So
very well said. Are there any words you'd like to leave the audience with before we go to your contact information?
No, that's about it. No, I'm good. That basically sums up Ironmaster. Cool title, interesting take on stuff. I recommend, as odd as it is. And I don't know, Michelle will be back, next month for Scholars from the Edge of Time, where we'll be talking about Hercules in a Haunted World. Keep it spooky. So, folks listening in, we'll talk about that classic one next month. I'm excited because Christopher Lee and Hercules and in the Underworld and Hades, and I mean, come on, Mario Bava directed. Where is it? I can whip out my giant Mario Bava book that I have that Tim Lucas wrote. It's like this big. So I know there's going to be a chapter about that big, just about Hercules and the Haunted World. So I'll be able to call that to present to folks.
Very cool. Have you seen any of the Ator series or Ator?
Yeah, Ator the Fighting Eagle.
That was the second one.
We talked about one of them maybe last year on the show with Miles O'Keefe.
Yes, Miles O'Keefe was Ator in 2 of the 3 Ator films.
Yeah, we watched one of them, the one where he wields a mirror shield at the end and takes out a giant spider. And I remember, aside from the creepy "I want to marry my stepsister"
yes,
it was a fun movie, even though I remember actually digging it.
I like the spider tattoo that kept moving around the sorcerer's head. It was in a different location throughout the movie. He's a sorcerer, so I guess that explains it.
That's how you can write off continuity errors. He's a sorcerer, his tattoo can move around. Or you could take the Mel Brooks jab from Robin Hood Men in Tights, where the Jerry Lewis Prince John has a mole that keeps moving around in his face. And pick that out. It's like, I have a mole?
Yeah, indeed. And part of the fun is finding those continuity errors and then coming up with reasons why they are what they are. Marvel used to have them. They were called no prizes back in the day, that if you caught a continuity error, if you explained it creatively enough, they give you a no prize in the Marvel comics.
Oh, I did not know that.
Oh, and cool. Is the Conan scene with Dr. Doom from Savage Avengers?
I think so. I think that was the Twitter or Reddit post I saw. All I have is the frame from it, but I'm going to say that because it's definitely a recent comic, not too old. So I want to say it is the Savage Avengers.
I'll have to look for that too. I'm a Conan fan. They came out with a new Conan series. They're up to issue number 3. I believe it's Kindle or Comixology only at this point. I don't think they made hard copies.
Oh, okay. I don't have a Kindle, but I got the Kindle app, so we'll have to look it up.
Thank you once again. How can people find you and enter your wonderful world of scholarly goodness?
I'm at nickdiak.com, nickdiak.com. I publish some essays there. I keep track of all the news and podcasts and stuff that Michelle and I are on. I try to update it when I can with essays and stuff. There has a link to all my social media on it. I'm appearing in other social medias now because why not? So folks that use like Blue Sky and Tribal and Post, I am trying those out as well. Will they stick? Maybe, maybe not. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I am very accessible and very gregarious. You can reach out to me in whatever venue and I will say hi, and it's cool.
Thanks again, and thanks to our wonderful audience. This should be up by tomorrow sometime, and I'm looking forward to sharing it because I really enjoyed your presentation and our conversation.
Awesome. It's always good to talk to you, Hercules. And as you always like to say, joyous journeys.
To you as well, my friend. Good night, everybody.